2013-2014 Transportation Series. This series brings together leading regional, national, international policymakers, architects, engineers, researchers, and planners to frame Boston's mobility challenges in a new era of economic and social transformation. Traffic Advisory has been very successful thus far with lectures attracting a diverse audience ranging from students working on transportation projects to city and community leaders. And anyone who can come here on a Friday night, that's testimony to how great this session has been. So thank you again for coming. If you haven't caught all the lectures, a summary of each is posted on the BSA website at architects.org. So last month we heard from 3 distinguished speakers: Harriet Trigoning, Director of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development; Philip Washington, the General Manager of Denver's Regional Transportation Network; and Jerry Dubrovny, Director of Transportation for the City of Vancouver, British Columbia. They presented 3 multi-scale perspectives on transportation development in their respective cities and told us how Boston can benefit from what they have learned. Next month, on June 19th, Traffic Advisory will take an international look at bus rapid transit. Speakers will include Walter Hook, the CEO at the Institute for Transportation and Development Policy, the ITDP, a sought-after authority on bus rapid transit systems throughout the world; Rahana Musaji, former MMC for the transport in Johannesburg, South Africa, and the brains behind Africa's first bus rapid transit system; and Joseph Calabrese, CEO and General Manager at Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority, responsible for implementing the best BRT in the States, the Silver Standard Health Line. This month, our honored guest and speaker has traveled from Italy to speak with us. Please join me in welcoming Sindaco di Roma, Mayor of Rome, Ignazio Marino. Since taking office in 2013, Mayor Marino, a daily bike commuter himself, has focused his attention on improving Rome's transportation system by pedestrianizing the most historic archaeological sites in the city. This unprecedented policy has turned Rome into a more bike-friendly place while reducing pollution levels and helping preserve ancient monuments. And just as a side note, Mayor Marino and Mayor Walsh met today. And I love the quote that you said to him, that when we dig, we find different cities and we find other things. And he will speak to us about that tonight, which is a unique challenge. Mayor Marino will share his plan on how to make Rome a more sustainable city and articulate the broader mobility shift that is taking place in an auto-centric city like ours. Before I turn the time over to Mayor Marino, I would like to take a moment to thank the organizers of this series: the Boston Society of Architects, the Boston Foundation for Architecture, the Boston Green Ribbon Commission, and the Barr Foundation. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones and sign in on the sheet. And I know it's not popular to sign in on the sheet, but honestly, that's the only way we know who came. And it's a way for us to connect with you and also find out how many people are here. We've also placed evaluation forms on the chairs so you can tell us how to improve. And you can be succinct. You don't need to tell us everything, but we appreciate the feedback. So please join me in a warm welcome with Mayor Ignazio Marino.
Good evening, and thank you for the kind introduction. Thank you for inviting me to this outstanding event. I wish to express my greetings to the President of the Boston Society of Architects, to the Consul General. He was here a few minutes ago, probably is within, oh, he's there. And to the ladies and gentlemen gathered here tonight. In today's world, urban mobility problems are a major challenge for transportation. A metropolitan area like Rome needs to be an efficient hub for both national and European transportation networks in order to be competitive and to make economic development sustainable. This is why innovative solutions are necessary to really affect mobility. Before my election, Rome's last urban traffic plan came out in 1999, so about 15 years ago. And you know how much our world changed in 15 years. In addition to the traditional goals of environmental protection and public health, innovative ideas about sustainable mobility, car sharing, and mobility management came up. But above all, ITS, Intelligent Transport System Technologies, were introduced and implemented as early as year 2000 with the realization of the Mobility Office. In the technological context of the early 21st century, innovation meant combining rules with technology-intensive control processes. Today, the green economy and smart cities with their fundamental principles increasingly drive us toward a systematic view in the governance of our cities. It is even more true for a city like Rome that has undergone major changes. Rome is a city that has 2,767 years, and as was mentioned before, wherever you dig, you find historical things, archaeology, and this makes an extra challenge to all of us because, for example, it's very difficult and challenging to build a subway in a city where, you know, every 3 meters you find a new villa, a new statue. The mayor of Boston today told me that he would like to have that kind of problem, but you know, if you have to build a subway and explain to your citizen why the work is not proceeding, then it is a different story. In Rome, new neighborhoods, often without adequate mobility infrastructure, have burdened the problems related to urban sprawl and have increased the need to use cars and motorbikes. Real solutions have not been provided to meet mobility needs and reduce the cost of transportation, nor have the conditions been created to give the city alternative mobility systems, like, for instance, encouraging bike and car sharing. Moreover, during the last 2 decades, many people have moved out into the suburbs. Obviously, the reason behind this decision is most of the time the fact that the cost of living, the cost of the housing in downtown is much superior to what you can pay for buy an apartment in the suburbs. But just to give you some figures, for instance, in 1998, 18% of the municipal population lived beyond Rome's outer ring road, so only 20% were living outside of the historical city. In 2012, this figure has increased to 26% of the people, of the population of Rome. The metropolitan area has also changed its features. Several municipalities have even doubled their population within the last decade. Today, the metropolitan area comprises 120 municipalities around Rome and has a population of about 1.5 million people, while the population of the city of Rome itself is about 3 million people. 1/3 of the population living in the municipality travels to Rome every single day for work or study. However, the impact of the crisis brings people to move less. I give you a few figures. In 2004, the metropolitan area of Rome movements were about 7 to 7.2 million per day. In 2013, this figure dropped significantly down to about 6.1, 6.3 million movements per day, so a difference of about 1 million per day in about 10 years. Another big change concerns commuters who grew by 50% between 2004 and 2013, going from 500,000 to about 800,000 movements per single day. The Rome surface network consisting globally of more than 3,500 kilometers of bus routes and about 2,300 buses is one of the largest in the entire European continent. And look at this number. Private means of transportation account for about 60% of the total movements. Public transportation at rush hours accounts for only 28% of total movements. Intensive use of private means of transportation has constantly grown from 2004 to 2011, but the trend started to reverse in 2012 and is currently declining. Today, registered vehicles amount to more than 2,800,000 units, and the figures includes more than 700,000 motorbikes. In 2011, and these figures are really striking and give you, the difference between transportation means in different capital cities in Europe. There were 978 vehicles per 1,000 citizens in Rome, as against 398 in London and 415 in Paris. But they can dig without funding a Caesar statue. For all these reasons, our work today is based on building a city that is rich in opportunities with an efficient public transportation system and on making walking as well as cycling safe, easy, and convenient for everyone. A low-impact multimodality mobility that is easily accessible and open to technological innovation. We are currently updating our tools for short and medium-term mobility planning. The goal is to improve the way current mobility systems are organized and to find new mobility solutions that can match users and environmental needs. It is our duty to do so because it is only through sustainable mobility that we will be able, first, to protect people's health and also to protect the archaeological, historic, and environmental heritage of Rome. And I would like to concentrate a little bit on this issue, which is really unique for a large metropolitan area. We don't have only the worry to protect people's health and the environment, but we have the worry to protect our archaeological richness. All of us have the duty and the obligation to protect the archaeological heritage of Rome. I'm deeply committed to this goal. For this reason, it is essential to take into consideration bold and innovative policies. Last year, as was mentioned before, a few days after my installation in office as mayor of Rome, one of the first actions I took was to close a section of Via Fori Imperiali to cars. The Imperial Fora and the Colosseum, the Fora of Augustus and of Nerva, the Trajan markets, are not only a heritage of the city, but I believe a heritage of the entire mankind. The Colosseum used to be considered for dozens of years only as a roundabout for about 25,000 cars every single day. After 7 months from my installation in office as mayor of Rome last January, we submitted our new general urban traffic plan. As I mentioned before, the previous one was submitted in 1999, so about 15 years ago. The aim is a model of accessibility consistent with Rome's historic, artistic, and archaeological mission. Mobility should not be a problem, rather an opportunity for making the city more livable, sustainable, inclusive, and competitive. The key issue of the new general urban traffic plan of Rome is the verb sharing. Mobility bonus, car and bike sharing, parking payment, ecological island, smart cards, and so on. If we look at the contents of the new general urban traffic plan, from another standpoint, what is striking is that we are moving toward a system that rewards people's good behavior. The new general urban traffic plan of Rome aims at creating a town with a public transportation system that is more convenient than private transportation, and where walking and using a bicycle is easy and safe. In one word, smart mobility. A traffic plan that includes a 2% systematic use of bicycle within 2 years. Today, we are about 0.6%, and an increase as high as 10% in the historical part of the city within the next 4 years. A 20% increase of public transportation users, the creation of at least one ecological island in each district in the next 2 years, structuring the whole historic city center into a large ecological island. Any action taken to manage urban traffic requires a structure of the road network giving well-defined functions to each road and each area. Limited access rules for private traffic were introduced to structure the whole town into ecological islands. The creation of ecological islands is aimed at developing and promoting soft mobility to ensure road safety, reducing the impact on the environment, reducing private traffic after enhancing public transportation, motivating people to walk and cycle for the positive impact on health. I think that is one of the target that we should reach, and I think that should be a preoccupation of a mayor. If you think that in a town like Rome, the expectancy of life changed significantly, and out of 2 of the girls that will be born in 2014 will make up to 100 years of age. So think about the way that you use your body today. If you live up to 100 years, it's very important that you walk, bicycle, and have a lifestyle that will protect you from disease in your later years. Pedestrians are of a crucial importance in Rome. This is why the environmental and pedestrian upgrading of the city cannot be achieved without the creation of an ecological island. For this purpose, I've designed some actions that will be completed before the end of 2015. Creation of ecological island through the historic city center, continuing the work started with closing traffic around the Colosseum. By this summer and summer 2014, the area between Piazza di Spagna, where the Spanish Steps are, Via dei Condotti, and Piazza del Popolo will become one big pedestrian area. No cars, no motorbikes. and the speed limit at 30 kilometers per hour, which is 18.5 miles per hour, will be implemented in all ecological islands. Most of the interventions are important not only for transportation but also for social reasons. They contribute to improving quality of life, reducing environmental pollution, reducing traffic congestion, raising the level of road safety, encouraging walking and cycling, hence, as we said, people's health. The number of car-sharing initiatives in Rome are increasing. I believe that this system needs to be built into a new mobility policy that offers alternative to private cars. From the central and neighboring areas where the system is already present, it will be extended to the suburban areas. The cornerstone of the service are the railway stations at the mobility hubs that must offer users a wide range of choices for traveling and using public transportation. In the short term, traditional car sharing will be extended to 8 more districts beside the 5 in which is already available. The 83 current pickup points will be increased by an additional 100 pickup points, and the current fleet will be tripled. Last January, Rome has identified a series of international partners, Car2Go, Enjoy, and NHP, for launching the so-called free-flowing car sharing. While I'm speaking, there are 1,200 cars belonging to these 3 companies that are on the street of Rome, and immediately after the summer, the number will be raised to 1,500. And now a few words about another priority, bike sharing. This system will be spread from the historic city center to outer areas. The cornerstone of this service are again the railway station and the mobility hubs that will be turned in sustainable mobility hubs. In the short term, the 29 pre-existing bicycle stations will be reactivated and will be expanded to a total of 80 stations with about 1,200 bike racks, and about 1,000 bicycles. The network of bicycle stations will expand to 350, and I have made a commitment to accomplish this by the end of my term. We have also decided to develop electric mobility. Our short-term goals are: 1. Appropriate signs indicating the presence of recharging points for electric-powered cars. 2. New criteria for choosing the public recharging sites. 3. Incentives for setting up recharging points for company fleets. A call for tenders has been issued that makes available more than 3 million euros, about $4 million, for new commercial fleets. In order to expand the recharging network across town, a number of projects were started this year, raising the number of recharging points to 400. I would like to close by briefly describing the 2014-2015 cycling program that is very dear to me. It is extremely difficult to find sizable financial resources at the present time. For this reason, I have decided to focus on a few strategic actions. Create a main, basic cycling network connected with the existing paths. Develop intermodality between public transportation and bicycles by setting up bike racks at the mobility hubs and allowing bicycles to be taken on board of public transportation. Raise people awareness about soft mobility and road safety through communication, training, education, aimed in particularly at young people. In summary, our goal is to give Rome a valid alternative to private means of transportation, especially because the great majority of Romans use their car for less than 5 kilometers per day. So you can imagine, a huge box weighing 1 ton to move a 70 kilogram, 80 kilogram person instead of alternative means of transportation. And this only for an average of 5 kilometers per day. Trying to reduce the use of private cars is a way to ease the traffic congestion in a capital city that, for its history and organization, is very different from all other European capital cities. I'm trying to demonstrate that biking in Rome is possible. In my personal experience, it gives me the opportunity to see some details that I would have never seen from a car window. And I can hear the voice of my town and sometimes somebody protesting of the potholes. The increasing number of bicycles in the city shows me that many Romans feel the same way. We had in the last 12 months, we had about 20% increase in selling of bicycle in the city of Rome. Well, thank you very much for your kind attention.
Good evening. We would like to open it up to questions now. If any of you have questions for the mayor, we have 2 mics, one over here and this one here. Testing.
First of all, thank you. That was wonderful presentation, very informative. I do have one question. When I was in Rome last summer, I took advantage of your electric bus line, and you mentioned, the issue with having the capital always to follow through on your dreams. What about the possibility of extending that electric line, not only in the Centro Storico, but a little further out? Is there a possibility there, and if so, what sort of timeline are we looking at? Thank you.
Well, as you probably remember, the electrical bus are kind of small, and we think that we could expand it a little bit, and in the next 10 to 12 months we will reach a few sectors of the city that are, outside of the historical city, but we are not thinking that could be the solution, and because of the small size of these buses. So we are actually thinking about expanding our trolley system, and we will have probably by the end of 2015 at least 2 or 3 new lines with trolleys, and now they are very sophisticated, and they are they don't make much noise, and the speed is usually very superior to the bus because they have their own track. So this is the way that we are thinking to expand our public transportation. And many other cities are thinking the same, and including in this country. I had a few discussions with the mayor of Washington that is also thinking to go back to the trolley system that was very popular many years ago, and then was, for whatever reason, was canceled.
Hi, I have 2 questions. I have the first question of the audience to find out how many people, along with myself, bicycled to get here tonight, or are regular bike commuters. Can I have a show of hands?
Well, it's a good number.
Okay. The other question I have is I'm sorry? Walkers, good too. Okay, let's have a show of hands of walkers.
Well, the walkers are...
Awesome. So we have a sympathetic audience. The thing I want to ask about Rome is when I studied in Rome in 1975, the first thing I did was buy a bicycle so I could do a lot of bicycle touring. And it was very rare for women to bicycle alone. In fact, I think I was the only one I ever saw. Has that changed? And are the percentages of bicyclists, ciclisti, more equal between men and women, or is it still predominantly male?
Well, I do not have that statistics, but I can tell you that I see a very large number of mother bicycling and taking the kids on the bike to school or to the kindergarten, and by now actually women have a prominent role in our society in Rome. If you think that, for example, we have the majority of medical students are women at the present time in Rome, and also for the first time ever, half of the government of Rome, the so-called assessori, the people that are helping me in ruling the town, they are women. So exactly 50% are women. So I think things changed a bit from 1975.
Thank you. I lived in Italy in 1962 on a Fulbright.
Which year?
You weren't even born. However, and every 5 to 10 years I'd visit Rome. And every 5 to 10 years I'd get there, and it was noisier, noisier, and noisier because of the Lambertas and Vespas. So I remember about 15 years ago, I went. Can you hear this?
Yeah.
I'm
better.
sorry. About 15 years ago, I was in Rome, and I went down to see the Architectural Institute. And I talked to a couple of architects, and I said, this noise is getting terrible. And they agreed, and they said that they thought that someone in city government was considering, over a 10-year period, to convert the motor scooters to electric. And I'm wondering if you ever heard of that. Converting it to electric motor scooters.
Oh, electric.
To reduce the sound. So now that I see bicycles, in 1962 you rarely saw a bicycle. They were always motor scooters. And I'm assuming that this is helping that sound problem. Is it or is it not?
Well,
and if not, what can you do about the sound?
There are two things that we are doing, and obviously the noise is still bad. And it's bad because, if you think that we have almost 980 cars per 1,000 adults compared to 350 in London, there is a striking difference. We are decreasing, as you have seen by the figures, the number of cars compared to the previous years. We are closing down entire areas to cars and motorbikes. And we are also experimenting a new tar that will use, a combination of rubber taken from, old rubber that you used rubber, and this will decrease the sound and probably will help. But eventually, the most important thing will be decreasing cars and motorbikes. That will be the final goal, and it's important for many reasons, including, and it's not a minor issue, that the pollution is really affecting in the last few decades our monuments, and I think that our monuments are not monuments of Romans, as I said before, but they belong to the entire mankind.
I'm still. Hello? Yes. I'm talking about cars, but I'm talking about cabs, taxi. And in Rome, as in many other cities in Italy, it's so hard to be able to access a cab in an easy way because you have to call ahead from somewhere, make an arrangement. That, I believe, would be a very nice add-on to your strategy of facilitating people just moving ahead on foot, and then if something is needed, getting a cab. Any possibility of changing the system?
Well, I think that you are right from many point of view. We at the present time do not have any plan to change the system as far as regular cab drivers or cabs. What we are trying to do is to make it impossible to have illegal cabs, which has been a problem for us, particularly at the international airport and major railway station. But I agree with you that at times is difficult to get a cab in Rome. But to be honest with you, the only thing that we have done is to have a number that is a single phone number that you can digit in order to access all the different companies, and this is probably making it a little easier than in the past to get a cab. But I agree with you, is very different from an American town or like Manhattan or London, where you can raise your hand and stop a cab. But I understand that this problem is not unique of Rome. I've been listening that at times it's very difficult in Boston to find a cab to go to the airport.
Thank you for a very wonderful, thoughtful and detailed plan and its presentation. One thing I think I didn't understand completely is the concept of ecological islands. Could you tell us a little more about that, what the objective is, what...
we want... I've been criticized, and I think rightly so, because at the beginning of my work as a mayor, I had closed down a number of streets downtown in Rome, and I've done this because I have a plan in my mind, which is to create the largest archaeological park of the entire planet. And I think that is very important. On the other hand, I think that the criticisms that I received are right about the fact that you can't concentrate in a city like Rome only in the historical city, and so we decided that we will have in every area of the town an ecological area, and by that we mean that we want a few streets where there will be no car, no motorbikes, and a few other streets where you can have cars and motorbikes, but the speed, the maximum speed allowed should be 30 kilometers per hour. There is the experience. I have no, actually, you may tell me about that. I have no knowledge about U.S. cities where they implemented this kind of rule, but in Europe we have a number of cities like Zurich or Amsterdam, where by limiting, and they call these areas ecological areas, by limiting the speed of the vehicles to 30 kilometers per hour, which is 18.5 miles per hour. Actually, you can have people walking and bicycling safely, and the buses or cars goes around, because at 30 kilometers per hour they are not perceived as dangerous as 50 kilometers or whatever.
Mayor Marino, in your presentation, I noticed you said you will reactivate, I think it was 28 or 29 bicycle stations that are already present in the city. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenges of the program? Because it had been closed down because there had been some problems with the bike sharing program. And you also said that you want to introduce new bike sharing stations. Does this include the periphery of the city? So is it in your plans to connect the periphery to the downtown area with bike sharing program?
Well, you are right about the fact that in the past the bike sharing failed. A lot of these bicycles were stolen, and there were act of vandalism, and this was a huge issue. I think what we are trying to do is to change the culture, and this is more difficult than introducing new technologies, new car sharing, new bike sharing. But I don't know how it happens, but in the last 12 or 24 months, things probably had evolved. I'll tell you a little story. When I was discussing 8-9 months ago with the companies that now have the new car sharing, the free flowing car sharing system that we have now in Rome with 1,200 cars, I was very, very much concerned about the possibility that there could be act of vandalism, or they could steal part of these new cars because of the free flowing, so we had no control where the car were going. And actually, I've been very proud in the last 3 months, because we had minimal vandalism. We had no cars were stolen, and actually we are doing on that regard better than Milan or other cities in Northern Europe. So I think culture is changing, and people are understanding that this is very, very important, and that all these public properties and needs to be respected and protected. Obviously there will always be people that will not be careful, will not be respectful of public properties, but I think this will happen everywhere.
I have a question, sorry. Yeah. And my question is more of how positive has the acceptance of all these proposals been made? Because, for example...
Could you speak loud?
Yes, of course. My question is about the acceptance. How positive has the acceptance been about the whole proposals of the closing of the streets? Because, for example, I come from Colombia, and where people tend to have from 2 to 3 cars, even 4 sometimes per family. And cars is actually not luxury. And so I wanted to know how positive has the acceptance been for those citizens of Rome, and if the car is luxury or not yet.
Well, I can tell you that the news of my decision of closing down traffic around the Colosseum was extremely popular worldwide and extremely unpopular in Rome.
Hello. You brought up the example and the comparison with London. If I'm not mistaken, London has a taxing for accessing the center of the city, downtown, with the cars. Have you thought of implementing this strategy also in Rome?
Yes, and we actually are in the middle of a lot of, if you would come in the next several weeks in Rome. This is one of the major things that people are discussing, because we established with a new budget that we are going to vote in the next few weeks, a significant tax, a very large tax to enter in the city center. And now we are going to fine tuning it, because the fare that we establish is probably too high, but we'll find a compromise. But yes, we are positively doing so, and we also increased significantly the fare for parking space downtown, because we would like to have cars rotating and not making it easy to put your car in one spot and leave it the entire day.
I wonder what sort of economic investment has had to be made in order to change the infrastructure, to implement the strategies that you are talking about. It seems that you must have had other government agencies involved in these decisions. And I'd like to hear a little bit about the economic investment and how you talk about the benefit long-term to the Roman economy.
Well, we would like to have the government, the national government, involved in all these plans, and actually at the present time is one of the major discussion going on with the national government, with our city government and the national government. We are actually you're bringing up a very important point. For whatever reason, Rome does not have an extra budget from the national government to run the cost that Rome has as a capital city of the Republic. Most of the capital cities in Europe do have an extra budget, particularly for public transportation, waste management. Just think that Rome last year in 2013 had 1,437 major national events. And, I have to explain my citizens that even these are national events, I have to, pay the cleaning of the roads, the security in the roads, and all the damage that are done with the money coming from the taxes of the citizen. And obviously this is is not considered fair by the vast majority of the Romans. If you think that in a day like April 27, when Pope Francis had the sanctification of two previous popes, we had 1.5 million pilgrims into Rome, and it costed to the city about 7 million euros, which is about $10 million to manage the day. We had more than 5,000 buses coming to Rome. Just think about managing from St. Peter's Square. 2 hours after the ceremony, we had to remove 100 tons of garbage. So, obviously this is part of the discussion that we are currently, is a daily discussion. The last time I met, the ministers of the national government was 3 days ago, and we need more help, because we cannot run the cost of the capital city without extra money from the national government, and this has been an issue in the last couple of decades in many capital cities in Europe. And Paris, for example, has 1 billion euros, so it's almost $1.3 billion of extra money to run the cost as a capital city of France.
Shall we take a few more questions? Do we have any on this end?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do you have any advice for those of us in Boston's neighborhoods who live close to the center of the city? For some of our meetings with elected and appointed officials, they bring a car and they park in areas that the rest of us aren't allowed to. Under our state capitol, there are designated spaces. It's been decades since we've had a governor who rode the tram, the trolley. And it's true at City Hall as well. What advice do you have to change the mindset, not just of our elected officials, appointed, some of the planners from some of the state and the local agencies actually drive to our community meetings and they park in front of hydrants or in areas of playgrounds. So what advice, everybody looks sometimes to the Italians for their exuberance, but what advice do you have to us here in Boston about changing mindsets of our political officials?
Well, you know, I'm not sure if this is an advice that the politicians here will like, but I can tell you what I decide to do. And I discussed this in the last few weeks. You know, this Via dei Fori Imperiali close to traffic, and you know, you see how it looks like. So it's open, wide, and unfortunately, the official cars of members of the Italian government, they think that it's easier to go through that because, and they do that all the time. So, you know, I decided by I didn't even announce this as of yet, but by June 29, we will take pictures and send to TVs and newspapers with, you know, we know because we have the local police, so we know by the plate who is on the car, and we will let people know all over Italy, and I think this will change their habit.
Mayor Marino, when I was in Rome last year, I took all of the train lines, all of the different types of one, which is what led me to create the maps that Mayor Walsh gave you today. But I noticed that it was very difficult to pay for the train, and I'm happy to pay for the train. And so a lot of people, and it's inconsistent how you pay for the different trains, even though the price on the different lines is the same. And I noticed a lot of people were able to get on the train for free that way. And so as you reintroduce the bike system, I was wondering if you're considering creating a smart card like they have in Paris that operates on all of the trains as well as the bikes.
Yeah, we will. The model that we have in mind is the Oyster card, the one that is used in London. Also, by this summer, we will have a way that we already have a way to pay the parking space, you know, with your smartphone. And we will have very soon a way to pay the bus or subway ticket with a smartphone. And but also we implemented a new different programs involving as educators our kids. So, for example, last week I took primary school, a group of primary school kids on the buses and on the trolleys, and they were allowed. They were wearing some kind of uniform, and they were allowed to ask people if they had their tickets or not. I was actually pretty good, and they were giving to people that had the tickets, free tickets for a museum, and if they were getting people without the tickets, they were writing, a warnings like, and some of them were very nice. I remember one was saying, "Who is paying his ticket is a superhero." But we definitely we are definitely changing the system, make it much easier to pay the ticket by a smartphone. And we actually changing the machine at the subway station, and so you can pay with credit card or debit card.
Okay, we'll take 2 more questions. Any over in this area?
Mr. Mayor, I wish you all the best with your plans. I would like to know, from your point of view, what is the major problem that you will have? You will have to face economic, cultural, political, in all this, actually implementing all these ideas. I hope that it would be close to maybe 100%, 90%, but what do you think it would be the major problem, the major obstacle?
Well, I think the major issue, obviously we have shortage of money, but that I do not think is the major issue. The major issue that and the major challenge that I'm facing at the present time is political and cultural, and I tell you why. I give you another example that has nothing to do with public transportation, but is waste management. For about 45 years in Rome, the management of garbage, of waste, was done without any technology. For up to the time that I was elected, the only way to manage waste, garbage in Rome was by the use of a huge landfill. And this, Rome was condemned by the European Union because of that, because of environmental issues and health issues. And but the fact is that there was one single person, a very rich man, who was owning this huge landfill, and was basically going to every single mayor of the last 45 years, saying, "Look, I will offer you to manage the waste of the city of Rome, and I will offer you a cost that is very competitive," and it was very competitive. It was 30% less the general cost of waste management in the rest of the country. But in this way, nobody, and I going now to the cultural point, nobody really had the driving to change the system, to think about new technologies, to develop new system, and now we have to really change culturally this way of managing a large city like Rome. And obviously, we were discussing even today with the people of my team accompanying me here in Boston, how difficult it is to explain people that we suddenly change, so they need to differentiate their garbage, and this is a cultural change that is really difficult to achieve, more than finding new money. And again, we are investing into the new generation, and we are starting a program from September in our primary schools, where kids of primary schools will learn from teachers how to differentiate the garbage at home, and they will have a special card from the mayor, and they can issue a fine to the parents. If and they heard about that, and they can't wait. They can't wait to do so. And I believe that starting from that point, we will really change the culture.
Any other questions?
Buonasera, Sindaco. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I have a question. I studied in Rome back in the 90s, and I remember the big transportation debate at that time was decentering the public function and some of the big business away from the downtown area. Of course, at that time there was no new technology, or it was just combustible fuel vehicles. Is this option still being pursued, or is it just been completely abandoned? Because nobody wants to give up the downtown because it's the good spot, and nobody wants to move to the suburbs because they're considered ugly.
Well, I can tell you that for the national institution like the parliament, we have no authority on it, and at the present time they don't look like they want to move in the suburbs. But we have a plan for the city offices. We have city offices everywhere. We are spending a lot of money to manage all these different offices, and and it's also difficult to work together if you are far away from another office. So we are building a new areas which is in the district called Ostiense, and all the city offices will be located there, and so the entire Campidoglio Hill, where the historical buildings are, will be almost entirely used as a museum.
Thank you, Mayor Marino, for such a wonderful talk. I want to thank you for such a deep dive into your that will be implemented now but pay dividends from years from now, especially with the health effects and the quality of life for the city and changing the culture, and that's no small feat, and it's pretty amazing. There was one more thing I wanted to say. Thank you to the BSA and to the BFA and the Bar Foundation for supporting this event tonight. And I hope you all are inspired to walk home, bike home, take the T. If you're driving, we'll take your photo on the way out. How about that?